SWAT Commander Ryan Mercer tightened his grip on the radio as gunfire echoed through Crestwood's quiet streets, while hostage survivor Emily Torres crouched behind a freezer aisle, praying every breath wouldn't be her last. The suburb of Crestwood usually woke to birdsong and the scent of wet grass after a night of rain, a place where neighbors waved to one another and weekend shoppers strolled without a care. On this particular Saturday morning, the clouds hung heavy and the drizzle had only just stopped when everything changed. At 9:14 a.m., a sharp crack echoed across the narrow streets, a sound no one mistook for thunder. It was the first gunshot. Within seconds, another followed, louder, angrier, and the peaceful rhythm of the neighborhood broke apart. People ducked behind curtains and scrambled to lock doors. The noise came from the small family-owned grocery store at the corner of Maple and 3rd, a shop so ordinary it rarely drew attention. Inside, a masked man had burst through the entrance carrying a rifle, his movements quick and deliberate. He fired into the ceiling to seize control, sending shards of plaster to the floor. Shoppers froze where they stood. A clerk behind the register dropped to her knees as the man swung the weapon in a silent command for everyone to stay down. No one dared to speak. Outside, a delivery driver who had been unloading crates heard the shots and sprinted to his van, fumbling with his phone to call emergency services. His frantic description of the scene spread through the police dispatch network in under a minute. Patrol cars from across the district raced toward the grocery store, sirens piercing the damp air. By the time the first officers arrived, the streets around the shop were empty of pedestrians. Neighbors peered from second-floor windows, faces pale with fear. The officers quickly formed a perimeter, blocking traffic and positioning themselves behind parked vehicles. Through the wide front windows of the store, they could just make out figures crouched low between aisles of cereal and canned goods. A single silhouette moved back and forth, the rifle glinting in the gray morning light. Attempts to call the store's landline failed. The gunman had ripped the cord from the wall. Every second that passed made the situation more volatile. The officers radioed for specialized units and warned nearby residents to stay indoors. Even seasoned sergeants felt the tension rising. This was not a simple robbery. The methodical way the suspect paced suggested planning, not panic. Rumors spread among the growing crowd, held back by barricades. Some whispered of an argument gone wrong, others of a criminal on the run. No one could know for sure. What was clear was that Crestwood's quiet weekend had been shattered, and a dangerous game had just begun inside that small grocery store. Police vehicles lined the narrow street as more units arrived, their flashing lights reflecting off puddles from the morning rain. Officers in tactical vests worked quickly to seal off every possible exit, establishing a tight perimeter around the grocery store. The calm organization outside contrasted sharply with the fear trapped inside. Dispatchers relayed updates over radios, their voices clipped but urgent. Every detail mattered: how many people were inside, where the gunman might move, and whether he had demands. A negotiator set up near a patrol car and tried again to reach the store's landline. But the silence on the other end confirmed what the first officers had feared. The suspect had severed all obvious lines of communication. From a command post hastily built behind a delivery truck, the incident commander studied the building's layout. The store was small but packed with narrow aisles, storage rooms, and a stockroom with a back door that led to an alley. Security camera feeds from a neighboring shop provided a partial view through the front windows. Grainy images revealed at least 6 hostages, 3 adults and 3 children crouched together near the refrigerated section. Their faces were pale, and their movements barely visible as they tried to stay hidden behind displays of produce. The gunman remained in motion, pacing with the rifle gripped tightly, occasionally glancing toward the windows as if expecting a confrontation. Detectives began digging into possible leads. A patrol officer remembered a bulletin about a vehicle seen fleeing a violent robbery earlier that morning in a town less than 20 miles away. Witnesses from that incident described a dark sedan with a dented rear bumper and a driver wearing a black mask. Surveillance footage from a nearby gas station confirmed that a similar car had been parked near the grocery store shortly before the first gunshots rang out. This information changed the urgency of the situation. The suspect was no longer a mystery intruder. He was likely a dangerous fugitive willing to escalate violence to escape capture. The afternoon sky grew darker as heavy clouds rolled in, adding to the unease. Rain began to fall again, drumming on police cruisers and blurring the flashing lights. Inside the command post, maps of the building were marked with possible entry points and blind spots. Officers whispered over radios, planning contingencies while keeping their eyes on the shifting silhouette behind the store's glass. Each passing minute raised the stakes. The gunman's intentions remained unknown, and the risk to the hostages increased with every breath. What began as a routine morning had now turned into a full-scale crisis demanding flawless coordination and quick decisions. The arrival of the SWAT team brought a new level of urgency and precision to the tense standoff. Their armored vehicles rumbled into position, heavy tires splashing through the wet street as team members emerged in black tactical gear. Each movement was deliberate and silent, a stark contrast to the restless crowd of neighbors watching from behind barricades. The command post shifted focus, handing over control to the specialized unit trained for dangerous rescues. Team leaders unrolled detailed blueprints of the grocery store, marking key structural points and potential blind spots. They noted the thickness of the walls, the narrow aisles, and the single rear door that opened into a cramped alley. Every corner of the building had to be accounted for before any action could be taken. While the team prepared, a small drone was deployed through a side window left slightly open near the storage area. The humming device slipped into the dark interior, its camera feeding grainy images to the monitors outside. Through the flickering view, officers saw the suspect continuing his erratic pacing, the rifle always in hand. Hostages remained clustered in the far corner, their backs pressed against a display of bottled water. Some trembled uncontrollably, while others sat perfectly still, as though movement itself might trigger a reaction. The suspect had barricaded the front entrance with heavy shelves and a stack of boxes, creating a crude barrier that would slow any direct assault. As the rain intensified, the air grew heavy and electric. Lightning flared on the horizon, followed by deep rumbles of thunder that shook the nearby houses. The weather threatened to complicate the team's plans, especially for visibility and communication. Commanders debated whether the storm might offer cover or increase danger. In the dim glow of streetlights, officers exchanged quick hand signals and double-checked their gear. Inside the store, a sudden metallic crash startled everyone watching the live feed. The gunman had knocked over a cart, sending cans rolling across the floor. His movements became more erratic, his pacing sharper and quicker. The situation felt like a ticking clock. Negotiators continued their attempts through loudspeakers, their calm voices carrying through the storm, but the suspect never responded. He seemed to be listening, but his silence was absolute. The possibility of a peaceful resolution faded with each minute. As the thunder grew louder and the storm pressed closer, the SWAT team tightened their formation, knowing that at any moment the fragile balance inside the grocery store could break. Lightning cracked across the sky as the standoff reached its most dangerous point. The grocery store's interior was nearly dark, lit only by the dim glow of emergency lights and the brief flashes from the storm outside. Rain hammered the roof in a relentless rhythm that masked the quiet movements of the SWAT team preparing for entry. Inside, the gunman's agitation escalated. Through the drone's camera, officers watched him pace faster, occasionally stopping to slam the butt of his rifle against a shelf. Each sudden noise made the hostages flinch and tighten their huddle. The storm amplified the tension, every thunderclap blending with the faint sound of muffled sobs. Commanders realized that waiting any longer would only give the suspect more time to unravel. A final briefing was held beneath a canopy of dripping tarps, where maps and diagrams were spread across a portable table. The plan relied on speed and precision, a coordinated breach from two directions, a flashbang to disorient, and immediate extraction of the hostages. Officers rehearsed signals and double-checked their equipment as rainwater streamed off their helmets and soaked their tactical vests. They moved into position like shadows, their presence nearly invisible against the storm-darkened street. At exactly 3:17 p.m., the green signal light on the commander's wrist blinked. A loud crack, sharper than the thunder, burst through the air as a flashbang device detonated inside the store. For an instant, the drone feed turned white, and the sound of the blast rolled out like a shockwave. Stunned by the blinding flash and deafening roar, the gunman fired blindly toward the noise, bullets splintering wood and shattering glass. SWAT officers surged forward from the sides, shields raised and movements perfectly timed. The front team breached through the barricaded entrance, while another unit slipped through the alley door, their boots silent on the wet tile. Amid the chaos, one officer spotted an opening when the suspect momentarily lowered his weapon. In a swift lunge, he tackled the man, forcing the rifle to the ground, where another officer kicked it away. The suspect fought with frantic strength, but he was outnumbered and disoriented. Within seconds, heavy restraints secured his hands and legs. The remaining officers guided the terrified hostages toward the exits, their voices calm and measured despite the roaring storm outside. The carefully executed plan had worked with exact precision, ending the siege before the gunmen could regain control or harm anyone. Rain continued to pour as the final echoes of gunfire faded and the flashing lights of emergency vehicles cast streaks of red and blue across the soaked pavement. Paramedics hurried forward, guiding the trembling hostages from the grocery store to a waiting ambulance. Each person was wrapped in a silver thermal blanket, their faces pale and eyes wide from shock. Medical teams checked pulses, offered water, and reassured parents as they clutched their children tightly. Outside the barricades, relieved neighbors watched silently, some weeping with gratitude that the ordeal had ended without a single life lost. The quiet suburb that had begun the day in calm now stood as the backdrop for a scene of organized chaos and quiet heroism. The captured gunman was led through the rain in heavy restraints, his mask removed to reveal a face both expressionless and tense. Officers kept a firm grip on his arms as they moved him to a secured transport vehicle. Reporters shouted questions from behind the police line, their voices nearly drowned out by the storm and the hum of idling engines. Investigators immediately began processing the scene inside the store, photographing shattered glass, overturned shelves, and the scattered remains of canned goods. Every detail would matter in the coming trial, from the angle of bullet holes to the footprints left in puddles of rainwater that had seeped through the broken entrance. Detectives soon confirmed what early leads had suggested. The suspect was a fugitive wanted in multiple counties for a string of armed robberies. His car, found hidden behind a dumpster a block away, contained stolen jewelry, counterfeit identification cards, and a carefully drawn map marking potential targets across the region. Documents inside indicated plans for a cross-state escape, including alternate routes and coded notes about law enforcement response times. The grocery store incident appeared to be an act of desperation, a final stand when flight was no longer possible. In the days that followed, Crestwood worked to regain a sense of normal life. Volunteers helped the store owners repair broken windows and clean debris, while neighbors organized a small gathering to honor the officers who risked their lives. Children drew thank you cards for the SWAT team, taping them to the shop's freshly painted door. Though life slowly returned to routine, the memory of the crisis lingered in every conversation. Residents spoke of courage, precision, and the fragile line between everyday peace and sudden danger. The swift and coordinated response had turned what could have been a devastating tragedy into a story of survival and community strength.